Maya Kapoor had always believed that love was built on rhythm, the unspoken harmony between two lives breathing in time. She had once felt that rhythm with Arjun. It was in the small gestures, the way he poured her coffee each morning, the soft pressure of his hand against the small of her back when they crossed the street, the gentle certainty of belonging. They had met in a city built of glass and ambition. Arjun was all charm and warmth, the kind of man whose laughter filled a room before he did. He was brilliant, magnetic, full of restless dreams. She was precise and thoughtful, her calm the counterpoint to his fire. Together they looked like a promise. For the first year, their marriage felt like a secret language only they spoke. They built a home overlooking the quiet stretch of Lake Washington, where the air smelled faintly of cedar and rain. On weekends, they cooked together, her playlists mingling with his laughter. She told herself that happiness in its simplest form was just a series of shared silences that didn't hurt. But time, as it always does, began to test the edges. Arjun's work, a small design startup he'd launched with borrowed capital, began to consume him. Late nights became early mornings. The bed grew colder, the conversations shorter. He was still kind, still attentive, but his eyes had started to drift, not toward other women at first, but toward horizons that no longer included her. Maya noticed. Of course she did. Her mind was trained to catch detail, the pause before he answered, the change in his scent, the hollow way he said, "I'm just tired." And then there was Nisha. Nisha had been her closest friend since college, bright, unpredictable, with a smile that could disarm the cruelest of moods. She had been the maid of honor at their wedding, the one who'd known all of Maya's fears before Arjun did. When Arjun began working with her firm on a marketing campaign, Maya had felt a flicker of pride. Two people she loved collaborating on something meaningful, what could be safer than that? Safety, she would later learn, is the most seductive illusion of all. The discovery was not cinematic. There were no dramatic confrontations, no lipstick stains or misplaced text messages. It was far quieter, the way truth often arrives. One night, Maya had gone to Arjun's office to surprise him. She'd brought dinner, neatly packed in the blue container he always teased her about, the one that still smelled faintly of curry, no matter how often it was washed. The building was nearly empty, the corridors lit by tired fluorescent light. Through the glass of his office door she saw them. Not kissing, not tangled in some cinematic betrayal. Just close, too close. The kind of closeness that had once belonged to her, the gentle, unthinking intimacy of people who no longer need to pretend. Nisha was laughing softly at something he said. His hand brushed her wrist. The look that passed between them was unguarded, full of that quiet, dangerous tenderness that precedes catastrophe. Maya stood there long enough for certainty to harden inside her. Then she turned and left without a word. She did not confront him that night, nor the night after. She moved through her days with careful precision, her grief folded neatly beneath her calm. At work, she smiled when needed, nodded through meetings, and answered questions with flawless composure. But something in her had begun to turn cold, not dead, but calculating. Revenge did not come to her as fury, it came as logic. Maya was not the kind of woman who screamed or shattered, she was the kind who built. And now she began to build something new, a plan so intricate that even she feared its elegance. She began with the assets. Arjun believed the startup he'd founded was his. What he didn't know was that nearly every major investor, every silent partner, every secondary holding was tied to Maya's private trust. She had set it up years ago for security out of love. Now it became her fortress. Then there was Nisha. When the first whispers of their affair reached her through quiet networks of friends and colleagues, Maya did not lash out. Instead, she met Nisha for lunch. "You've been distant," Nisha said, playing with her wine glass. Maya smiled. "We've both been busy." Nisha tilted her head, curious. "And Arjun?" "Working too much, but you know him," Maya replied evenly. "He doesn't know when to stop." The words hung between them like smoke. It was in that moment Maya saw the truth in Nisha's eyes, guilt disguised as concern. She almost pitied her. Almost. Maya reached across the table, touching Nisha's wrist the same way Arjun had. "You've always been such a good friend," she said. Nisha's throat tightened. "Always." It was then Maya knew she had her. Weeks passed and the performance continued. Maya played the part of the oblivious wife, gentle and understanding. Arjun grew bolder in his deceit, confident in her trust. Behind his back, she tightened her control, restructuring accounts, moving assets, redirecting contracts. The company that bore his name now sat quietly under hers. There was a strange satisfaction in her precision, not joy, not triumph, but the cold comfort of order restored. At night, when Arjun came home smelling faintly of unfamiliar perfume, Maya lay beside him in silence, studying the shadows of his face. Once she had loved him fiercely, now she loved the plan more. And beneath that plan, like the low hum of electricity beneath the city's surface, was the ache of something she could not name, not forgiveness, not regret, but the anticipation of release. When the trap was finally set, Maya felt no fear, only inevitability. The gala would be the stage. The audience, investors, journalists, the glittering circle that had always admired Arjun's charm and brilliance. She arranged every detail with meticulous grace. Invitations were sent, speeches rehearsed. Even Nisha, radiant in red, played her part, unaware that every gesture, every word was already scripted by Maya's hand. The night before the event, Maya stood by the window of their home, watching Arjun work late in his study. The lamplight caught in his hair, painting him in gold. He looked tired, older. For a moment she almost softened, almost. But then she remembered the way his voice had once said Nisha's name, low, tender, unguarded, and the warmth inside her froze again. In the reflection of the window, she caught her own gaze. There was something unfamiliar in her eyes. Power, distance, peace, perhaps. Tomorrow, she thought, he would finally understand what silence costs. The night of the launch arrived clothed in rain. The city glimmered beneath streetlights like a wound disguised in gold. Inside the converted warehouse by the waterfront, every detail had been arranged with surgical precision. The flowers, the light, the music, each chosen by Maya herself. Arjun was in his element. He moved through the crowd like a conductor before an orchestra, laughter trailing behind him. Cameras followed his every step. Investors leaned forward when he spoke. To them, he was the story, the visionary, the man who turned risk into empire. Maya watched from the back of the room, her expression serene. The black silk of her dress caught the dim light, her diamond earrings glinting faintly when she turned her head. She was the picture of quiet devotion, the elegant wife, standing in the background of her husband's brilliance. No one saw the shadow behind her calm. At precisely 8:45, she glanced toward Patrick, her legal advisor, standing near the bar. He gave the smallest of nods. The timing was perfect. By 9:00, the press emails would be sent. By 9:05, the financial documents would leak to every major journalist in the room. By 9:10, Arjun Kapoor's company, his pride, his creation, his lie, would no longer belong to him. Maya lifted her glass and took a slow sip of champagne, watching. Nisha arrived a few minutes later, wearing the scarlet gown Maya had once recommended. It was almost poetic, the colour of both love and ruin. She caught Arjun's eye across the room. The air between them changed, a spark visible even to those who didn't know what it meant. Maya noticed, of course. She wanted him to see her, the friend who had betrayed her, standing radiant under lights paid for by Maya's fortune. She wanted him to believe, for just a few moments more, that everything was still under his control. The speeches began. When Arjun took the stage, his voice rang with confidence. "This company," he said, "is built on trust, on the people who believed in me when no one else did. My wife," he paused, looking at her with that familiar performance of affection, "she is the heart behind every success we've had." Applause followed, cameras flashed. Maya smiled, a small, measured curve of her lips. And then, as the last flashbulb dimmed, the first phone vibrated. It began with a single journalist near the front, then another, then 10, faces lit by the blue glow of screens, brows furrowed, whispers rising like smoke. Arjun hesitated mid-sentence, and with this expansion his voice faltered. He looked toward Patrick, who avoided his gaze. Then he saw Maya. She didn't move, didn't blink. Something in his expression broke. Within minutes, the murmurs became noise. Someone called out, "Mr. Kapoor, is it true the company's assets were transferred last month?" Another voice, "Sources say your wife controls all majority shares. Care to comment?" Arjun's face went pale. Maya watched the realization spread through him, the slow, horrifying understanding that the empire he had built on her money, her trust, her name, was no longer his. The silence between them stretched thin and sharp. She raised her glass one last time, a small, private toast, then turned and walked away. He found her outside minutes later in the rain. The noise of the party had dissolved behind the closed doors. His hair clung to his forehead. His hands trembled around the phone he still held. "Maya," he said, "what did you do?" She looked at him, calm as still water. "I protected what was mine." "You ruined me." She tilted her head slightly. "No, you ruined yourself, I just documented it." His laugh was brittle. "Do you even hear yourself? You sound rational," she interrupted. "Finally." He took a step closer, rain streaking his face like tears he refused to shed. "You think this makes you strong?" "No," she said, "just free." For a moment he said nothing. Then quietly, almost tenderly, he whispered, "You're colder than I thought." "I had to be." They stood there, facing each other like the last survivors of a shipwreck, the wreckage of their marriage scattered behind them. Then he turned and walked away. She didn't follow. By morning, the story had consumed the media. Arjun Kapoor's company collapses in scandal. Maya Kapoor takes control of Bightline. The woman who outsmarted her husband. Maya's phone buzzed incessantly, congratulatory messages, interview requests, invitations. She ignored them all. The house felt unbearably quiet when she returned. Every object, every framed photograph seemed to belong to another life. She walked into the bedroom, opened the closet, and began to pack his clothes into boxes, not with anger, with precision. Patrick stopped by that afternoon with the finalized legal documents. "You've done what most people only imagine," he said. "You took back control." Maya looked at him, her face unreadable. "Control," she repeated softly, as if testing the word. "Yes, that's one way to name it." When he left, she stood by the window for a long time, watching the rain blur the city into watercolor shades of grey. For the first time in months, she felt something close to emptiness, not the hollow ache of grief, but the weightless quiet that comes after the last note of a song fades. It wasn't relief, it wasn't victory. It was the silence she had earned. Days passed. Arjun stopped calling after the fifth unanswered attempt. The divorce proceedings began without incident. He signed everything she asked for. The world moved on as it always does. But Maya didn't. At night she lay awake, her mind looping through moments she could no longer control. His laughter, Nisha's voice, her own steady calm as she'd watched his fall. She wondered whether justice could exist without cruelty, whether retribution ever ended where it was meant to. The silence in her penthouse grew thicker with each passing day. Sometimes she caught herself listening for footsteps that would never return. She began visiting her office earlier, leaving later. Her assistants whispered that she seemed different, sharper, quieter, her warmth replaced by an invisible distance. They didn't understand that distance was now her only defense. One evening, she received an email. No subject line, no greeting, just a single line. "I don't hate you, but I finally understand you." There was no signature, but she knew. Maya closed her laptop slowly and stared into the dark glass of the window. Her own reflection stared back, poised, powerful, alone. For a moment, she thought of writing back. Then she didn't. Instead, she whispered, almost to herself, "Understanding isn't forgiveness." Outside, the rain began again, soft as breathing. That night, she dreamed of a mirror. In it, she saw herself and Arjun standing side by side, but when she turned to look at him, his reflection remained still. When she tried to touch the glass, it cracked not from rage but from recognition. She woke before dawn, her heartbeat steady, her eyes dry. The city outside was silent, waiting. And Maya, for the first time since it all began, allowed herself to feel the smallest tremor of something new, not remorse, not relief. Something like clarity. Maya woke one morning to the sound of her own name on the news. The anchors spoke it with a blend of admiration and unease, as though uncertain whether she was a heroine or a warning. Maya Kapoor, the woman who redefined vengeance, one headline read. She muted the television. The silence filled the room like water, heavy and cold. In the weeks following the scandal, the world had crowned her with many names: genius, feminist icon, corporate assassin, yet every title seemed to hollow her out a little more. Each interview request, each invitation to speak at conferences about female empowerment, reminded her that they were applauding something she hadn't intended to become. She hadn't wanted to inspire fear. She'd only wanted to be seen. At the heart of her new success lay an irony that gnawed at her. Everything she owned, everything she now controlled, had been bought with the same ruthlessness she despised in Arjun. The offices of Brightline Enterprises gleamed under her direction, all glass and symmetry. But behind the shine, she felt the exhaustion of maintaining a story that no longer fit her skin. The employees revered her, whispered about her calm authority, her almost mythic poise. She walked through the hallways like a ghost of her own making, immaculate and untouchable. But every so often, she would pause by the conference room window and catch her reflection. And there, in the faint light, she saw what no one else did, the woman who'd been broken and remade in silence, carrying pieces of both vengeance and loss in her eyes. One evening, after a particularly long board meeting, Maya found herself driving without purpose. The city lights blurred, the traffic moved like slow blood through veins of asphalt. She ended up at the very cafe where she and Nisha used to meet every Friday before everything had changed. The place was quieter now, the decor modernized, but the faint smell of coffee and cardamom lingered. She ordered a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching strangers pass. She didn't notice the woman until she sat down across from her. Nisha. Her once lustrous hair was shorter now, and her face carried the fragile tension of someone learning to live with regret. She didn't smile, neither did Maya. They sat in silence for a long time, two women bound by the same ruin, but on different sides of the flame. Finally Nisha spoke. "You win," she said softly. Maya stirred her tea. There was never a game. "Wasn't there?" Maya looked up. "You think I did this to hurt you?" Nisha's laugh was quiet, almost kind. "You did it to survive, I understand that now." The words hung between them, a strange offering of truth unwrapped from bitterness. "I loved him," Nisha said after a pause. "I thought he loved me too." "He loved the mirror," Maya replied, "not the reflection." Nisha nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. "He's gone, left the country. Said he couldn't stand being the ghost in your story." For a moment, Maya felt something stir, not guilt, not pity, but the faint ache of memory. When she spoke, her voice was almost tender. "Tell him he was never a ghost, just the echo I needed to stop listening to." That night back home, Maya walked through her empty penthouse, turning off lights one by one. The city stretched beneath her like a sea of artificial stars. She stopped by the full-length mirror in her bedroom, the same mirror that had reflected their laughter once, the one that had witnessed her transformation. Her reflection stared back, poised, distant, whole. She raised her hand and touched the glass, expecting the coldness she'd always felt. But tonight it was different. The surface felt almost warm, alive. For the first time, she didn't see the strategist or the betrayed wife. She saw the woman who had endured, broken, mended, and learned to breathe in silence. Weeks passed, the press began to forget. New scandals bloomed, new heroes rose. Maya found herself returning to smaller things, tending to her mother's old garden, reading poetry, sketching again after years of neglect. She discovered that her revenge, though flawless, had not been an ending. It had been a mirror, forcing her to see the parts of herself she had abandoned. In that reflection, she found something she hadn't expected, peace that did not depend on victory. Months later, an invitation arrived in the mail, a small white card with black lettering. "You are cordially invited to the reopening of the National Art Museum." Maya hesitated, then went. The exhibition featured contemporary interpretations of emotion, "the faces we hide," the curator called it. She moved through the gallery, her heels echoing softly on the marble floor. Then she saw it, a painting that stopped her mid-step. It was of a woman standing before a cracked mirror, her reflection fractured into dozens of shards, in each a different emotion: rage, sorrow, longing, stillness. The title beneath read, "The Mirror of Silence." The artist unknown. Maya stood there for a long time. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. For the first time she felt seen, not as a wife, not as a strategist, but as a soul who had walked through fire and learned to listen to her own quiet. She turned away from the painting, stepped out into the night air, and let the wind carry the last remnants of the past away. The silence that followed was no longer heavy, it was home,